It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, my friends. Welcome to another State of the Dungeon address. I am Rob, of course, and this is the story of my very real game that took place in my basement on January 13th, 2022. The 13th part is important, as you'll discover. So, all players were in attendance. We, of course, had our, again, still has the new party smell of this group. We've got Zarya the Barbarian. We have Aldrich the Wizard. We have Jazor, sorry. Can't read my own writing. Jazor the Paladin. We have Luxor the Warlock. And Warlock kind of rogue, and then we have, of course, Felix the Ranger. So it's a pretty good, diverse party. The group has just encountered their first real dungeon, sort of. They kind of had like a mini dungeon in their encounter with the Kenku before, but I don't know, just one enemy group in a single building. I don't count that as a dungeon. This was more dungeonish, definitely. So this is, of course, in the adventure Dragon Heist, and the group had slogged through sewers in order to try to track down Floon. Floon, of course, is a friend of Volo, and they've been hired, offered 100 gold pieces each if they can recover Floon, who went missing after the night before. They had a bit of a bender drinking. Volo left, and now Floon is missing. So the group has to find him. They've only been paid 10 gold in advance each, so yeah, they need to work on this. So they go into this marked door in the sewers, hoping to find Floon. Now, when I say they went in, there were complications, of course. The person who most closely resembles a thief, I mean thief in this case, not rogue, thief, would be, of course, Luxor. And Luxor went forward to take a look-see-peek-see at the keyhole of the door. You know, like a thief would. Unfortunately, his description was to look at the door. He didn't look to the left or the right, where he would have seen the arrow slit in the wall, and he got shot for his lack of looking. Again, just kind of some unfortunateness. However, thinking fast, Zarya took her shield and she put it in front of the arrow slit. Can't shoot out if the wall is blocked. Yes, I know it's only a -2 armor class and maybe full cover. No, if that slit is covered, you're not shooting an arrow into a shield that's right against that's just dumb. So, wanting to kind of investigate a little bit, Felix came forward and he heard clearly goblin voices on the other side, and they were crabbing at this situation. The goblin was not happy that his shots were blocked, and they were going to go back and tell the boss, which added a little bit of urgency to the whole affair. Luxor he made short work of that lock, which didn't exactly kill the urgency of the moment. Luxor went through. No, Luxor doesn't do that. That would have been Jazor. Jazor went through. Of course, being the paladin, putting himself in danger, that always pays off, right? Not so much. He walked into a hallway that's turned sharply to the right, and once he did, thwap, gets hit hard with an arrow. There's an arrow slit at the end of this hallway, and he took it like a champ. Right in the gut. He's not down, but he's had better days. And because they had that rough spot with the problems with the Kenku earlier, he's used up all of his lay on hands powers. So the group has no real healing. They've been patched up a bit, certainly, but it's a lot different than when you can just go, your wounds are gone. So they're all kind of, a little cautious. So now he's hurt, and what happens? Well, Zarya, it worked the last time. Zarya runs up and slams her shield in front of the wall again, which again stops the goblin archer from firing another shot. At the end of this hall, there's another door, which Luxor moves up, they're lucky there wasn't a trap right in front of that arrow slit. If I was designing a dungeon, you'd always have a trap directly in front of arrow slits to stop somebody from doing exactly what Zarya did. They didn't think that far ahead, though, so that being the goblins. The group was as alert as they could be. I mean, they did take some precautions. Sending the paladin first made sense. He had all the hit points, but not anymore. So the party realizes that pulling back into the sewers and taking a long rest, while they were able to take a long rest, would have meant 8 hours that goodness knows what would happen to Floon. So they had to press on as best as they could. So, of course, again, Luxor makes short work of the door, and the group presses through. I believe Zarya took point at this point, since she was just a little dinged up. Most of her wounds had been healed after having been dropped by the Kenku. So she pokes her head in. She sees there's a room full of junk, and really looking at it all. And then they found a room where it was behind where the arrow slits were. And quite clearly, the goblins had cleared out after their game had been discovered. They did their damage well enough. Let's face it, there's not a lot of goblins that get to do, a significant amount of damage like that to a group and run away. So they were doing well. They saw at the far end of the arrow slit room there was a staircase going down, and that's clearly where the goblins had run off to. To the point where they even heard them running away. So the group kind of split their attention just a little bit, kind of poking around, but nothing too serious. And then went down the staircase, ready for traps, ready for ambushes. They let Luxor go forward first, and Luxor is very stealthy, which worked out pretty well. He got to the bottom of the stairs, found another passage, found an open sleeping area. Looks like, there are a bunch of straw mattresses laying out. Clearly they had been slept in, but nobody there at the moment. There's another door at the far end of the room, and gliding over to that, again, quiet as a cat. Tabaxi, what do you do? He started sniffing around at that other door by the time the rest of the group came up. And he found that the lock on this door wasn't all that difficult either, so he whipped out his tools and started picking that as well. Well, the group came up to join him, and just as he finished picking that lock, they could hear voices on the other side, though. There were two kind of angry voices yelling at each other, and yelling at the goblins, who were in the room, clearly. So they charge into the room. They find out that there are 5 people in the room. 2 of them are the goblins who shot at them. One of them is that bald guy with the circular tattoo with a radiating, what they think now are eye stalks, because he clearly is a member of the Xanathar Guild. Talking to a Confederate, and also in the room, not being all that stealthy, there was a Duergar who was just kind of leaning against the wall, trying not too hard to be noticed. Just kind of chilling. So, speaking of chilling, the group moved forward to do their stuff. A sleep spell was cast, but this was after a Burning Hands had been thrown down by Luxor, a warlock. Toasted them pretty good, killed a goblin, badly injured another goblin, badly injured one of the guys, slightly injured tattoo head guy. Fairly seriously injured him. An arrow through the shoulder took down tattoo head guy. That was, of course, fired from Felix. When the group is on point, they can be pretty scary. When, for some strange reason, he's got the worst dice luck, but when Jazor swings that sword of his, nothing but air. I don't know if he hit anybody, honestly. But it didn't matter. The fight was pretty much over as soon as Aldrich dropped the sleep spell. Fortunately, Aldrich himself is an elf and couldn't drop himself, but all the targets he was throwing at had already been hurt, so the number of hit points worth of creatures that he could sleep came all the way back to him and ended up knocking out Luxor. Everybody else just felt a little bit tired, but there was nobody who was weak enough to get hit afterward. The Duergar just said, "Hey, I'm just here. I'm not fighting you guys. I don't have any reason to." And the group basically said, "Okay, well, you just stay there. we're going to deal with this, and then we'll talk. Like, okay, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to gain and everything to lose from fighting you, so I'm just going to be here. And they're like, okay, we don't mind this Duergar guy. He seems like he's a pretty decent guy. So they bind up the people who aren't dead. Sure. And they look. There's two ways out of this room. One of them is a normal door. The other one is kind of a shabbier door. But those two humans were busy shoving stuff in front of that door. And after asking the Duergar, the reason is because on the other side of that door is a gray ooze. It had somehow gotten loose in that room, and the one who was yelling at Tattoo Head Guy, because the ooze could ooze under the door and in and still get at them when it got hungry enough. So putting all this stuff up to stop the door from opening wasn't going to stop the ooze. It was going to crawl under the door. And he was telling him to block up underneath the door to slow it down. The group's like, we don't want to face a gray ooze. No way! That sounds terrible. Well, what's through the other door? Oh, that's the way to the boss. What? Oh, yeah, boss this area. Well, who is he? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I'm just a messenger. I just travel from point to point and deliver messages. I never really actually dealt with a boss. Huh, okay. They didn't really interrogate him. They just kind of got reassured that there's gray ooze coming in that side and that going through that door would lead to a boss fight, which they were not ready for. So, they're like, okay. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to fall back to the arrow slit room. It's clear enough that if anything comes from underneath, we can spot it and we can have to deal with it, which we'd have to do anyhow. We are not going to pop out into the sewers. That might be safer, but who knows what's out there. So we're going to reinforce the room with the arrow slits, and we will rest an hour. 1 hour should not make a significant difference. We can do a short rest. We can spend hit dice. We can get back into fighting shape. Our mage can get his spell slot back. Yeah. This sounds like a good idea. We should do this. Okay, good. Yes. So they do all of this. In the meantime, unbeknownst to them, they thought they had taken away all of the weapons that Tattoo Guy had on him, but he still somehow managed to get out of his bonds, cutting free and escaping with the others of his group. So they're gone. Probably won't be an issue. But they did get to recover, and Jazor got a really good heal on his hit die roll, so he's back up in full shape, even if he doesn't have all of his abilities necessarily. And they were feeling a lot better about themselves going forward. So they go back down, and Luxor goes off ahead to go and tackle that door, and his passive perception is not enough to realize that the gray ooze had come into the room and had eaten that goblin who was dead on the floor. It couldn't resist the smell of dead flesh, so it squirted out. Jazor paid that no mind and went over to the door, and the gray ooze went lunch, got him in the leg. Gray oozes do an awful lot of damage to go against first level characters. So he drops. Now, they had been warned by the Duergar that not by the Duergar, their own skill checks, that gray oozes have a powerful acid. They can be devastating to weapons that are used to attack them. Didn't really tell them about any weaknesses or disadvantages that they have, so. But now Luxor's down. He actually got crippled by that attack to the leg. So, what does he do? Well, he lies there very still. The rest of the group are kind of like, oh, what are we going to do? Should we attack? Should we not? Well, in the end, Jazor had to attack. He had to move forward and try to fight the thing off. And he attacked, and he missed the ooze. Poor guy. But others were throwing things. Javelins seemed to be fairly effective against it. A good firebolt spell hit it. Actually, no, I take it back. I think Jazor hit it with a javelin. I think that was his one shot he hit. But At any rate, they did enough damage finally to destroy the Grey Ooze. And they got Loxor out from it just discorporating, flowing out all over the place. So they, of course, took the time to stop him from dying using a little medicine check. And they're actually getting pretty good at stopping people from dying, as it turns out. So he's not dying. And they go back and they go through his stuff, because they don't have any healing potions. They don't even really have healer's kits, honestly. They go through his things and they find a couple of bottles. Because what else could they do? And all of them knew that they didn't have anything like healing potions. So on his body, they found 2 healing potions that he himself had purloined. And they're like, well, let's try to give him one of these. Okay. They did say that they were healing potions. So they attempted to deliver one of the healing potions. A not phenomenal roll. Caused him to choke out half of it, only getting half of the benefit, but it was enough to get him awake. And for a warlock who wants to just stay at a distance and shoot things, he didn't need to be at full going forward, but I'm sure he didn't feel that much reassured. They soundly yelled at him for holding out on the healing potions, assuming that he had done that while he was with them. None of them had actually seen him do it, but, he did. So they yelled at him because, player knowledge versus character knowledge. He also got rolled and lost a couple of knives that he had purloined off of the thieves in the room where he fell. So Zarya took a couple of extra daggers because she's kind of hurting a little bit in the ranged weapon category. So, with his leg still hurting like all get out, Loxor went over and he picked the lock. And they found out that it led to a passage, which turned and went along a fairly decent length passage before there was a staircase going up, back up to about the sewer level. About there. Not quite, but yeah. And they could hear voices up there. Ah. So now the stealthy characters of the group, that being Felix and Loxor, decide they're going to stealth up and find out what's going on. And they find out that in the room at the top, it's a big room, there is Floon on the ground being tortured by a half-orc who clearly can use magic. And behind them, on a chair, there's a mind flayer. And he's caressing an intellect devourer that's sitting on his lap. And they turned several shades lighter. Not the characters, the players. The players all have no delusions that as first-level characters, they really should not be playing tag with mind flayers. They're a little bit out of their league. And the players knew that. The characters could probably have figured that out, but again, player knowledge versus character knowledge. So, they're like, okay, we need to save Floon. We don't want to tangle with that intellect devourer, but we need to deal with that. So how do we do this? Well, the rest of the group made stealth checks quite well to move up to the staircase without really being noticed, so that they were all going to be able to get involved. Okay. So, Loxor came in, fired off an Eldritch Bolt, ducked off to the side behind cover. Pretty much par for the course from him. They took turns, basically, attacking either the Intellect Devourer or the Mage. The first attacks were against the Intellect Devourer, which they seemed to fear as much as anything. And quite honestly, they're creepy enough. I don't really blame them for that. So that happened, and Aldrich came in and Firebolt. I think he hit the Mind Flayer, or the Intellect Devourer, too. Nobody directly attacked the Mind Flayer. They were interested in dropping that Intellect Devourer quickly, because those things can be bad. I believe, because it's been a few days, but Felix attacked as well. I think actually his arrow is the one that hit the Mind Flayer, and I believe that Aldrich was attacking the Orc Mage. Zarya came in and was menacing. She raged before she went in, which is really good because advantage on checks to affect her mind. Oh, so useful against a creature as nasty as a Mind Flayer is. And she had her great axe out, so she was dressed for this fight. Really, she was actually one of the more ideal people in this kind of a fight. That kind of unfortunately came to the fore when the Mind Flayer healed his little buddy and told him to go hunt and play, and threw him down into the fight, where he immediately turned his psychic might against Jazor and dropped him with a psychic bolt. Nobody else saw it, but all of a sudden Jazor just goes, ah, pff, down. Well, when a creepy disembodied brain on four legs drops somebody and starts going towards your downed companion, Aldrich stepped forward and blocked in the thing's way with his own body, which is pretty admirable. And the rest of the group was fairly determined that they were not going to let that thing get anywhere near Jazor. None of them could heal Jazor, so he was down for the fight, which I'm sure didn't feel great for him. Considering his first time making a death save, he failed. But this is where the farce of the night started taking place. Both Jazor and Luxor were cursed. First of all, Luxor's luck was abysmal. He rolled nothing but ones from this point on. His first one knocked the greatsword out of Jazor's hand as Jazor was dropping. So if he had been roused, his sword was across the room, and he would have had to make do with whatever else he had left. That was fun. Then he cast another spell and cracked and disarmed Aldrich as his orb was damaged from a misfired Eldritch Blast. That was suboptimal and kind of annoyed him. Then, as Zarya moved up to attack the orc, and the others pretty much double-teamed and destroyed the Intellect Devourer. It had attacked Felix, hurt him a bit, but Felix viciously counterattacked, and their combined fire dropped the Intellect Devourer pretty quickly. It looked like it might actually have been a pretty good wizard versus wizard combat. Magic missiles were met by a shield spell. His magic missiles were met by Aldrich's shield spell. And the half-orc was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Zarya comes along with her axe and just wallops him. Poor sucker didn't see it coming. However, he's a half-orc, which meant that even though that shot was incredible, he still had one hit point left as a result, and he got all cocky about it. And while he's standing there bleeding, that's when Luxor took a shot, and he hit Zarya. The one attack in the group that actually would get through her resistance was a bolt. It did not drop her, however, so she got lucky there. But, so they were like, okay, we've, this hasn't been so good. And then Zarya took another shot, went right down his collar. Dead half-orc. Now, you might be asking yourself, what did the Mind Flayer do through all this? Well, how would they have so much success? The Mind Flayer didn't participate. He just got up, glided down the stairs, went over to another door, which had been closed. It just opened at his approach, and he walked through. Now, Felix moved up because he was flanking along that side. And as he had his bow out, and the Mind Flayer just looked at him, and through telepathy said, "Do you court death?" Obvious threat. And to be fair, Felix, being smart enough, did not shoot at the Mind Flayer to annoy him. So, the Mind Flayer just gave him a nod and walked through the door. Well, Felix checked the room that he walked into, and all he saw was this black rectangle in one wall that's otherwise blank. A few moments went by, and it just rolled up, vanished. He was the only one who saw it. So, the group won. Yay. And they found a few treasures in the room. They found the spellbook of the wizard. That was really about it. But they did find Floon. Floon has been beaten terribly. He was tortured, no doubt about it, psychically and physically. So he was a shaking mess. But the group has no healing. They did everything they could just to try to bring Jazor back by giving him the last remaining healing potion, which did well. And they really didn't explore or look anywhere because they were in rough shape and they knew it. They're like, let's just get out of here. We're done. Except for Luxor. Luxor looked into the room that he had ducked in for cover, and he saw that it was a relatively plain and unadorned room, but he found a loose flagstone, which led to a crawl space, which led to another flagstone, which led into somebody's basement. Yes, Luxor broke away from the party to go and explore this. You know what they say about curiosity and cats, right? Well, in this case, he found that this basement was full of kegs. They looked like they were kegs of beer, different beers. And the room was just lit by a single candle. So somebody had been down here at some point. But, yeah, there's nobody around. He didn't hear anything. So he just took the cask that he could, stuffed down the down into the crawl space, pushed it through the crawl space, and managed to get it out, wriggle out the other side, and pull the keg up. And he walked out with it. And everybody's like, where did you get that? Oh, I was found it in this room. Oh, okay. So, the group, didn't question it because they weren't really in a position to question anything. And they decided they were going to leave. So, they left. Really, there wasn't a lot that was going to get in their way. They found an escape from the sewer relatively easily because, like several sewers, there are access points, so if there's a blockage or a problem, somebody can get down there relatively easily, so they did. And they got flown out by using a tensor's floating disc, so they didn't have to carry the big lummox, because he is fairly, substantially sized. And they got him out into the fresh night air. They all smell of sewage, but they decided they were going to head back to the Yawning Portal Tavern, so they can meet up with, hopefully, Volo and get paid. Well, they get there and they find out there's a new bouncer there. And he doesn't appreciate them coming in reeking of sewage. And they're like, okay. They start casting prestidigitation, at least Eldrick did, to try to cut down. It took 5 individual spells to completely cleanse the sewage. And as they were going along, a lady who was overlooking the balcony overhead came down, took her staff, raised it up, everybody was instantly healed. She turned around and went back upstairs. She didn't want to smell them either. And they were pretty foul. So Volo comes along. He's like, oh, you saved my friend. I'm so grateful to you. So grateful. So very, very grateful. Surely you can feel the gratitude. And they're all like, ahem. Ahem. And he's like, they're like, okay, we need a room. They went up to the barkeep, who of course owns the place, and he wasn't thrilled to see them necessarily. And coming in smelling the sewage was one thing. And then of course Luxor has a keg, and it's really rude to go into a drinking establishment with your own liquor. Just a good tip out there for those of you who intend to go pub crawling: don't bring a drink from the last place you went to. They don't like that. I know from experience. So he's like, okay, tell you what you can do. Since they said, it turns out that one of them has the bartender as a contact. Not a bad guy to have as a contact, by the way. But he says, okay, I'll tell you what you can do. You can rent a private room, and then you can drink whatever you like. They're like, okay, that sounds fine. How much? He's like, 20 gold should cover it. They rolled their eyes because they are poor. Dirt poor at the moment. But eventually they're like, okay, fine. We'll rent your room. We'll stay on your good side. That's the important thing. Thank you very much, Master Durnan. And Durnan's like, yep, whatever, I make money. So they went to the private room. And Volo's like, okay, well, here's the thing. I hired multiple adventuring parties to find my friend. You were successful. You did fantastically. I knew you were great heroes. But here's the thing. I spent so much money. I don't have coin to cover what I promised I'd pay you. And they immediately started to get really, really challenging of their preferred alignments, I suspect. A couple of them might have suspected that was going to be the case anyhow, but Volo had an option. He's like, hey, but here, I'm still going to pay you. And actually, you're going to thank me for being so generous, because I'm giving you something infinitely more valuable than what I was going to give you. Just the coin I was going to give you only had so much value. This is going to be even better. And they're like, what is it? With the feeling of dread coursing through them, he's like, a deed to property. This, he pulls out a scroll tube, this has a deed to a very choice piece of property here in the North Ward. Well, we're not in the North Ward, but if you go to the North Ward, this is a very valuable piece of property, and I'm giving it to you in lieu of paying you the money that I owe you. You will find this property is worth vastly more than the 500 measly gold I would have given you. With this, you'll be property holders in the town, which gives you an extra amount of status. And this establishment, when it was in its prime, was really, really nice. As a matter of fact, at one point it was a tavern. What adventurer wouldn't like to have his own tavern and make it your own? You might even make it more profitable than it ever was before. And they're like, we're going to have to think about this. He's like, no, absolutely. Tell you what, I'll talk to you tomorrow. You go check the place out. You've got the deed. You can verify it. Absolutely. I will get a magistrate to notarize it with my signature tomorrow if you accept this offer. And they're like, okay. So Volo goes off, and they spend a while together discussing things, discussing what's going on. There's some talk about, the adventure they just had. Specifically, some criticism about the way certain people are operating that some members of the group may not appreciate as much. Although, to be fair, Loxor's blunders were karmically related. That's just what you do when you roll ones. It happens. And I do enjoy being a little liberal with some of the wackiness that fumbles can be. Rarely do I cause anybody to be really hurt by these things, though. And, in truth, he only rolled once, and I rolled for the severity, only once bad enough to hit poor Zarya. So, they'll be fine. They'll heal. So they got rooms, and they're able to take a rest. They also got to spend the night drinking that cask, which is actually a fairly decent stout from the cellars of the Peabody Brewers in the Dock Ward. Can't really complain for free alcohol, right? And they got to enjoy the night. A couple of them crashed on the couches, but over time they got to their own rooms and they were fine. Now, a few things. They did, however, as we closed, they did get to have a round of basically asking each other questions, which was actually a pretty nice little character building episode, because how often do the things in your background ever get known by the rest of your party if you don't do things like this? So they went around being able to ask each other generally some of the most obvious questions about their characters, because that's how you get to know people, right? If you're going to trust your life to somebody else, you want to know them, presumably. And that's basically what happened. They spent the rest of the night asking each other's questions and answering them, and those who answered questions got a point of inspiration. The only one I believe who did not was Felix, who kind of deflected any such questions. They were also joined by Renair Neverember, of course, the estranged son of the former Open High Lord, Daggelt Neverember. And they saved him, of course, from the building where they fought the Kenku. They rescued him. So he was grateful to them. He gave them a relatively small amount of money, all things considered, even though he never promised them anything. First level characters getting 50 gold pieces should be pretty happy for that. And it was an opportunity for me to disgorge a pair of birthday presents to the players of Aldrich and... Get over here. To the players of Aldrich and Felix. A nice bow and a nice wand for their characters. There's a number of birthday presents that will be coming soon for upcoming birthdays as well, so I've got plenty of ideas for that. But that is where we ended the session, which was, all things considered, pretty decent. Sounds like the party might be excited about the prospect of having this tavern, which they questioned Renair about, and he admitted that it was a home, it was a manor, turned into a tavern, and is now rumored to be haunted. So, haunted tavern, even better. They're excited. So, that is, that's that. So, if you're interested in this, please pick up on the next episode of my State of the Dungeon address for this group, which should be in about 2 weeks. And hopefully you enjoy this, and you'll keep coming back for more. Especially since there might be opportune kitties available. So, until next time, thank you, everybody. I'm Rob, and this has been my State of the Dungeon address. Until next time, farewell. Say farewell, Magic. Say farewell. She's not going to say farewell. So, toodles.